Okay, I'm going to make today a carrot cake. Now, I've made various carrot cakes over the years, and this is a recipe that I've sort of stuck with and quite like making. Usually there's quite a thick cream cheese frosting on the top of a carrot cake. This one actually is more of a glacé orange flavoured icing, and I prefer it, but the actual carrot cake itself is really moist, it's really nice, really delicious. So the carrot cake is lovely. If you're not so sure about having the glacé icing frosting, that's fine. Maybe find a cream cheese frosting to put on top. So first thing I've done with this is I preheated my oven to about 160 degrees, about gas mark 4 or 180 if it's not a fan of them. You could do all of this in a bowl and just literally whisk it with like a manual hand whisk or an electric whisk, but I'm going to chuck it all in the Kenwood today because it's going to go in 3 very different stages. So first thing I'm going to do is weigh out the sugar, the oil and 3 eggs. So the sugar I want 175 grams of. This is light brown soft sugar. If you haven't got brown sugar at the moment, because it has been quite difficult to get hold of, dark brown soft sugar would be okay. It would be a slightly richer cake, or caster sugar would be absolutely fine as well. So 175 grams going in. Oh, no, sorry, it's the problem with brown sugar is it sticks in the bag. It's quite Then to that you're going to add 175 millilitres of oil. So again, that's 175 grams. So either way, whether you're on grams or mils, it doesn't matter. So I've zeroed it down so I don't go too far wrong. The problem with liquid is it carries on even after you stop pouring it almost. There's a little bit extra from when you stop. So when you get closer to the right amount, just slow it down. There we are. That's 175 grams of oil. And then I'm going to add into that, I'm going to move my scales so I don't do this on top of them and break them. I'm going to add to that 3 eggs. So 1, 2, 3. They're quite large eggs actually, those ones. Because I wanted to put the box in recycling this morning, they've been left at room temperature, but either way, it shouldn't make a difference. Because I've got raw egg on my hand now, I'm just quickly going to wash my hands. And then, if you were doing this by hand, you would literally just mix it together so that the eggs get broken up a little bit. I'm going to chuck it in here and just switch it on. It's on at the wall, that always helps. Yeah. I'm just going to let that have a minute or two. While that's getting ready and just mixing the eggs and getting them done, I've got 140 grams of carrots that I've peeled and grated. I've got an orange which I've just rinsed off, and I'm then going to zest, which is what I'll do while you're watching that, while this is going on, and 100 grams of mixed fruit. It could be anything you want really. I've got a mixture, I think, of some sultanas, some cranberries and some raisins, because that's what I had in and that's what needed using up. So while the machine is just doing its, getting the eggs, sugar and oil combined, I'm just going to zest this orange. And that's done. Let's just get the rest of this orange done. Now you need to keep the rest of this orange, so although it's zested and we've got all the lovely oils from the skin going into this cake, you need to keep the actual orange juice, so the rest of the orange, because that will form part of the glacé icing. Oops, very clever. So there we go, that's that. Let's try and get some of these. I did clean my surfaces obviously before I started, so let's do that. So, into your egg, sugar and oil mix, you're going to add your carrot and add the orange zest. So 140 grams grated carrot-ish and 100 grams of dried fruit. And I'm going to turn it on again and just let that mix just for a moment. Brilliant. We're not trying to incorporate a lot of air in here. The air that we're going to get into this is going to come from the next ingredient, which is the self-raising flour, and we're also going to add some bicarb of soda. So, again, let's lift the machine up. The last little bits then are 175 grams of self-raising flour. If you don't have self-raising flour, use 175 grams of plain flour and about half a teaspoon, 2.5 grams of baking powder. That will turn it into self-raising flour. The next thing you're going to add is a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. So I'm going to use the slightly bigger, the actual teaspoon for this one. Because I don't like the idea of getting the flavour of bicarb in with my spice. I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, but I'm going to do 2 half teaspoons to make it the 1 teaspoon. If that makes sense. So half and 1. I've been a little bit generous there because I know my cinnamon probably is a little bit out of date. Then the last ingredient is some nutmeg. Now you can get nutmeg ready grated, I'm sure. I have to be honest, I've always bought whole nutmeg, and my mum at some stage gave me this cute little mini grater which holds the nutmeg in the top. I love it. So you want about half a teaspoon of nutmeg. If you grate it in, then it's much more fragrant than if you have pounded nutmeg in the cupboards. That doesn't tend to keep its aroma and taste quite so well. And this is a bit of a guess. I quite like nutmeg. If you don't like nutmeg, as I know someone that really doesn't like nutmeg, add a bit less. I'll just have a bit. There we are. So nutmeg's gone in. Now this is all going to go into the mixture with the fruit in it now. So that's all going in. And this will be quite a slicky mixture. So I'm just going to very quickly turn this on and allow this to just combine. Again, if you're using just by hand, then you'd notice it come together quite easily. If you were using an electric whisk, you'd struggle a little bit because of the grated carrot and the fruit in there. Perfect. So, at that stage, I'm going to try and get some of this beautiful mixture, and it's generally the carrot that sticks on with this, off the beater, which is why you'd struggle if it was an electric hand whisk, but there we are. I'm going to put that in the wash because it's sticky, as you like. And now this mixture, if I can show you, is quite loose, it's quite liquid. Doesn't look like a traditional, like a sponge mixture might. Okay, so don't worry about that if it looks a bit like that. The recipe asks for an 18-inch tin. I know that this is bigger than an 18-inch tin. It's probably about 22 centimetres square, but it always works in there, I don't have a problem. So I'm just going to pour this in. Making sure they get everything in. And then this goes into the oven for probably about 45 to 50 minutes. It is going to be a bit denser in texture than, for example, a traditional Victoria sandwich would be, but you do want it to be cooked all the way through. So if you try popping a skewer in the middle, the skewer should come out clean, although bear in mind if it's got dried fruit in the mix, which it has, if you get a piece of dried fruit that will stick to the mixture. Just to get those last little bits out. There we go. In that goes to the oven. I'm then going to get washed up and I'll rejoin you when this comes out the oven, and I'll show you then how to make your glace icing that's going to go on top of this. Okay, join you in a minute. So, cake has come out the oven. It had about 45 minutes in there, and it is firm to the touch on the top. I could have also put a skewer in and just made sure that it came out clean. I've left it for probably about 10 or 15 minutes for it to cool down a little bit in the tin. Now I forgot to say to you, because I have a silicone mould here, I've used that as my tin, but if you're using a conventional tin, then you need to line that with some baking paper before that goes into the oven. So I've let it cool down for about probably 10-15 minutes. I'm going to turn it out onto a cooling rack so that I can then make this icing and decorate it. So I've loosened it around the edges, and then just take the lid off, or take the top off of it. There it goes, lovely. You can see all the fruit in there, because it's got quite a lot of fruit and the carrot in, that will, and we didn't get lots of aeration in it or anything, it will sink to the bottom a little bit, that's fine. Because we're going to make some icing and then glaze it over the top of this, I'm going to actually rest this cake on top of a little bit of greaseproof paper. That will just help to catch some of the icing as it drips off. So that's why that's there. So I took the orange that I zested earlier, and that's gone in here, and I juiced it. I want about 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of the orange juice in with icing sugar. Now it's good to have about 175 grams of icing sugar. I only had 150 grams of icing sugar at home, and so that's what I'm using. So I will be using no more than 1.5 tablespoons, and in fact I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon of the orange juice. So that's not quite a tablespoon, so add a little bit more. A tablespoon of the orange juice goes in, and then with the icing sugar and the juice you just stir it. You're aiming to get the consistency of like cream, double single cream, so that you can pour this. The idea being, if you've got piping bags and the wherewithal at home, you can then pipe the icing on top. If you don't have piping bags at home, it's okay. You can use a spoon and drizzle it with it coming off a spoon. So at the moment this is quite a thick paste, but there's no way I can pipe this, and it's also still got some icing sugar in there. So I'm now going to very gradually add a little bit more. So I'm going to start with probably another 1/4 teaspoon. The problem with glace icing is all of a sudden it goes from being this sort of feel where it's too thick to being like water. And so you want to get it before it gets to that stage. So that's now getting the lumps out, which is fine, but it's still absolutely too thick to pipe. So I'm going to put another few drops in. Now at this stage it is a few drops rather than 1/2 teaspoon or anything, it is just a few drops, and that will slacken this off. Bit thinner, but it's still too thick for me to pipe, so I'm going to add a few more drops. Take that somewhere about right. Now if you inadvertently do add too much of the orange juice and it becomes very liquidy, you've got two choices. You either can add more icing sugar if you've just added a little bit too much of the orange juice, or if you've made it absolute water, you'll use a whole box of icing sugar to try and correct it if you add more icing sugar. So in that instance it's probably worth starting again. There should be plenty of juice from the orange left, it's just the icing sugar. So at the moment that's come out rather nice. I'm just going to add literally a couple more drops. There's no lumps in it or anything. Any icing sugar lumps has gone as I've gradually incorporated the liquid. And so that now is a nice free moving, a free pouring icing, which is good. So I'm going to put the orange juice to one side. I will probably get someone to drink that later on. And I've got my piping bag. Now I'm not putting any nozzle in this, there is no need, it is quite a liquid, it won't really take the shape of any nozzle. It's quite a small piping bag I've got, so usually I would put a piping bag and line it around the outside of a measuring jug. Because these are so small, it wouldn't actually fit around the outside of a measuring jug. So I've turned it over at the top, and it's actually lining a mug because it's quite a small jug. I'm going to make so that it pushes down inside, but I've still got quite a lot of the inside of the bag around the outside of this mug. I'm going to pour the icing in now. I haven't made this cake for a year or so, but from memory I think there's quite a lot of icing left over. So if you're able to stop the icing coming out or put it back into the bowl that you've made it in, you could actually use it to top other things. I'm just thinking maybe little mini cupcakes would be quite nice. So that's there. I'm going to just get my hands clean before I even start. So then I'm lifting, take into the middle there, lifting the icing bag out. Because I've overlapped it over the top of the mug, I can turn it into the right way and I don't get sticky hands on the outside. Now it's not going to want to go down very far at the moment because I haven't cut a hole in the end, so it's got a lot of air in there. So the next stage is to cut the end, and then I'm going to zigzag in lines. Now because I know there is a lot more icing than I always think, the zigzag lines are going to be quite close together. So I'm taking just a little bit off the bottom. I can always cut a bit more off the icing bag, but I can't make it smaller once I've done it. And then you just drizzle it and let it drizzle over the edges as well. And once this is done, now I don't have the steadiest hand, I'm afraid. Once this is done, you allow the icing time to dry and go hard. And then you can cut this into slices. I would imagine this sort of size cake probably would do 16 to 20 slices. Oh, I'm really not got the steadiest hand. Let's stop there. Let's bring the icing sugar down, or the icing down a bit, and start again. So you can see this cake is still warm because the icing is just slowly getting absorbed in there. Particularly in the middle where it's obviously hottest. And because I've got quite a lot of icing left, I'm going to turn the cake 90 degrees, and I'm going to do some more going the other way just to use up the icing, because the icing just adds a little bit of different flavour. And I will say about this cake, it absolutely, as it cooks, smells phenomenal. So if you want one to get the teenagers out of the bedrooms because they're, I don't know, or off their phones or whatever, this will get them down. More than likely it does smell absolutely fantastic. And I need to stop, just get the icing back down. Yeah, nice. And that's it. Let it cool down, let the icing go hard, cut it into slices, and I'm sure that this will get eaten quite quickly. It's a really nice, really nice cake. There you go. Excuse the dodgy icing. Hope you enjoy that one. Thank you.